All right, I don't want to scare you, but I do want you to start thinking tonight. We all remember 9/11, right? Does anyone remember the warm-up back before 9/11? Not the horrific attack on the World Trade Center back in 2001, the one that preceded it. Maybe acted as a dry run for it back in 1993. Even though many experts say, for a very patient al-Qaeda, that February 1993 so-called failed plot at the time on those two Grand Towers set the groundwork for something that eventually would make dust of those Grand Towers and thousands of innocents who worked in them. These series of hack attacks at Target and Neiman Marcus and so many other retailers, put them all together. What if I told you these were the high-tech warm-ups for something much bigger, something economically much nastier, much more disruptive? What if I told you that this isn't about unnerving just a few shoppers, maybe lots of shoppers? This might all be a prelude to unnerving capitalism itself. Think about it. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And to hear some tech experts tell it, all of these security breaches, we ain't seen the half of it. But connect the dots. Follow what is an undeniable pattern. Mexicans caught at the border smuggling in stolen credit cards. 20 million South Koreans recovering their personal data, and it's all been breached. Teenage hackers from Russia, malware experts from the old Eastern Europe, bank accounts frozen, retail CEOs flummoxed, shoppers not shopping, politicians here not acting. More trouble brewing. Is it me or is it 1993 all over again? Paul Michael Viollis has been watching all of this. He's been connecting a lot of dots. In fact, he's done so long before any of us took notice. And this world-renowned security expert doesn't like where those dots are leading. Where do you think they're leading, Paul?
Well, I think the interesting part here, Neil, is that when we study the business model associated with organized crime groups that focus on cyber attacks, this is reminiscent of, as you said, prior to 9/11, when we started seeing more and more penetration testing from organized crime groups. Then it was al-Qaeda. Here we're looking at more a three-level trajectory. One, the groups focusing on ultra-high net worth individuals because they make a great target. Two is the corporate America, which is examples of Target, Neiman Marcus. And then three, which is the ultimate, will be clearly the infrastructure of the United States. No question.
To what end? What are these leading up to?
Well, it really comes down to who the groups are, because they have a different agenda. You look at the groups coming out of the Eastern Bloc, their focus is much more on the ultra-high net worth because they're interested much more in financial gain.
Just stealing their money.
Exactly. Now, the other groups that we're looking at clearly are focusing more on the large-scale gain and much more of a statement. Now, what we saw in
When you
Target,
say a statement, going after the retailers, the Targets, and even Marcus's, tens of millions of Americans, bank records, what does that do?
Well, one, it tells you just how weak you are. And they're playing on our own vulnerability.
So we get scared.
Exactly. Second part is you adversely affect the economy because you make people reluctant to go shopping. And what was interesting was it really didn't affect us that much during the holiday season, but it will certainly affect it more going forward because they've made their point. And then the last part about making a statement is all of a sudden when the lights go out or traffic lights stop working because everything is interconnected, that's going to be much more a statement about control and control of the country and who's really in control.
All right, because that's a whole nother matter if you have if a shopper is nervous or if you were worried for your very life nervous. Part of the concern after 9/11, the second attack, the real attack that succeeded, was that it would put a pall on spending because besides just the devastation and death, it was supposed to hit our economy in the center of our economy, the center of capitalism. That turned out to be much shorter lived than I think even al-Qaeda thought. But your thinking is something like this has a more pervasive nature to it. What do you mean?
Well, I look at just the return on investment that the various organized crime groups have right here. Talking about an industry that's generating, just from the financial side, over $400 billion a year. And their business plan, or their mantra of negative migration, negative behavior migrates to the path of least resistance, they're exploiting our own vulnerabilities, and part of that's our own ego and reluctance to conduct solid assessments so we understand where we're weak preemptively. And they know that. They're playing against that.
And they know that we're a bigger target because in Europe they're harder targets because they have chips in their cards and everything else, so they're harder to breach. Right?
And we still don't get it yet. We still don't understand the severity of this and the fact that we are truly in the embryonic stage as a country of dealing with this issue.
So you talk real quickly about the next thing being something on our infrastructure. I always worry that all bets are off if millions of Americans' bank accounts are drained simultaneously. Right. Now you've got a problem.
Right. No question. But Well, again, when you start going into someone's personal information, you assume that identity, and the next step, which we're seeing now, is the ghosting side, where you've got hackers going in, reading your emails, knowing how to communicate with your wealth manager, and then clearing out bank accounts.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Paul Michael Viollis, and he's been on this before anyone, so I'm not trying to be an alarmist here. Certainly neither is he, but just follow this pattern.